Good morning. Today's topic isn't a fun one for me to talk about, but there's something that I have just figured out recently last night that I thought I'd like to share with you. And it's about Elisabeth Elliot, and I loved her teaching. I love that she mostly focused on biblical womanhood. She wasn't afraid to teach about submission, women being keepers at home. She had a very gentle and quiet spirit about her. I can't find anything that she teaches that I disagree with, except for one thing. When I was in college, she spoke to our chapel. It was filled with men and women, and she spoke at it, and I didn't think anything about it. In fact, I love what she taught. But as I've studied scripture, I've often wondered about that. And then I was watching a video of hers recently, and she was teaching a role of women to a class, but in the class was men that I noticed. And then as she was closing her talk, she said that her next talk was going to be to men on how to be real men. So my antennas went up. It's like, why is she teaching men? And then last night in bed, I was listening to a talk of hers. She was teaching in a church, in a large church filled with men and women. And it was just, I forget the topic even, but it was good. But it wasn't just about for women. And she even mentioned her preaching and that she was teaching men and women as if it was no big deal. So I looked up what her thoughts were on women preaching, teaching to men in the churches. And I found an interview by her, and she said that she thinks it's okay. She doesn't think it's okay she will never preach in a church service in the morning, but she will teach at night at a church service or in a Bible study with men and women. She thinks that's okay, as long as she's under the authority of the elders in the churches, and it's for a brief time. But there's a lot of videos of her speaking for over an hour, and in this interview she says she's testifying. It's not I'm giving my testimony, and testifying means teaching. So apparently she absolutely has no problems with teaching men, which is a problem since 1 Timothy 2 says women are not to teach nor to be an authority of men. She claims she's not in authority over men, and as she has the same views as Nancy Wolgemuth has views now too, that it's okay for women to speak in mixed assemblies as long as they're under the authority of the elders. But that's not scriptural. Women are to learn in silence with all submission. Neither of them talked about that in Nancy on her questions about women in ministry, or Elisabeth when asked about this. Neither of them talked about women being quiet in the churches. And then the scripture gives why women are to be quiet in the churches and not teach and have authority over men. And in 1 Corinthians 14:33, it talks about it being shameful for women to speak in the churches. Now, I know some of them, you will say, well, you speak, you teach men. No, I don't teach men. And I never speak in a church. I'm quiet in my church. I'm even quiet in my Sunday school class when men are present. I'm quiet. I listen. I learn in silence with all submission. I teach women biblical womanhood. Every man who listens to this video, reads my blog posts or my social media sites, knows I am teaching women. I never teach men. I don't tell them how they are supposed to live. I don't tell them God's will for them. When they are learning from me biblical womanhood, and there's nothing wrong with that, because they know that I'm not teaching men. I will never teach men. So therefore, I was wondering if Elisabeth Elliot is partly responsible for paving the way for female preachers. If Elisabeth Elliot can teach Bible studies with men and women, why can't Beth Moore? That's how she started her ministry. If she can speak in churches filled with men and women, why can't Joyce Myers and Priscilla Schreier and Christine Kane and all the other female preachers? And I'm not calling Elisabeth Elliot a false teacher, because I can't find anything that she teaches that is false, except for I don't believe I think she's completely wrong in her stance about this topic I'm talking about. Whereas all these other female preachers, they start teaching very, very false things, and they never teach about biblical womanhood like Elisabeth Elliot very plainly did and exalted biblical womanhood. So I still love Elisabeth Elliot. I will listen to her, but I'm just wondering, did she Pave open up a door that shouldn't have been open for women in the churches? Just something to ponder, and something for us women who do love to teach to be careful about never doing, teaching in mixed audiences in the churches or teaching men or being in authority over them. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.